Hi, we got to get moving. We got a couple of really good topics to talk about today, and they might take a little while, so I just want to burn straight through these. We're going to talk about the Vimrc and the Vim runtime. These are very important things. I've been talking about settings you can set, mappings you can do, all kinds of stuff. I haven't told you word one about how you keep these things lying around. Vim obviously is highly customizable. Incredibly so. Fantastically so. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how to do that. The core way to do that is with the Vimrc file. The first thing we have to do is take a look at where it could be. Okay? Because I'm on a Mac, I also run with Windows. We may have some Unix users out there. I presume we actually have a fair bit if we include Linux. I highly doubt we have any VMS or RISC OS users out there. So we're going to kind of ignore that side of things. Maybe no Amiga users either. But let's have a look first at the Vimrc help. Okay? Bang! There we are. Vimrc help. You can see right here, I highly suggest you read this. Do a search for Vimrc. It's these three lines here that I'm really concerned about at the moment. In Unix, and this includes OS X, your Vimrc is in your home directory. That's where it's going to look for it. You can repoint Vim to look in other places and whatnot, but I'm not talking about that today. If you want to do something that crazy and that radical and that cool, then you can look at the documentation. It'll tell you how to do it. So we need to look at the Vimrc, and it's in for Unix. This includes Linux, Solaris, HP Unix, OS X, all these Unix-y type things. It's going to be in your home directory, what a file name called .vimrc. In Windows, it's going to be in your home directory. Now, people don't always know what their home directory is in Windows. I think all you have to do is you should just be able to go to Windows, and if you go to a DOS prompt, you should just be able to type echo something like that. Okay? Or what you can do is you can type env, I think. No, you type set. If you type set on the DOS command prompt and look for home somewhere, then you should be able to find it as well. On Windows XP, I know that it's in the this kind of area. So your documents and settings, and then your username. Okay. So for me, this is generally Quinn or WYATT or something like that. That's your home directory. So in here, you would actually see your Vimrc. Note it doesn't have a dot in it. It has an underscore. That's just the way it is. Okay. So let's toss that. We'll do a help again on Vimrc. And so that's where you're going to find it. So when we talk about editing this file, that's what we're talking about. That's the file we're talking about editing. And if you don't have it, just make one. All right? So let's just talk now about what goes in that sucker. The Vimrc is special in its name, its location, and that's it. Its name and its location. Vim knows how to load it at startup time. There are command line prompts that can tell Vim when you start it, that can tell Vim don't load it, or don't do this, or don't load anything, or load this instead, or whatever. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the standard behavior. The standard behavior says load that thing that is by that name that you already know about. So if you have it, it loads it. Done. Anything else, it's not really that special. It's just a file. You can have another file in the system that you want to, say, play with or test or screw around with and just source it. If you source it into Vim, it's the exact same thing. When we talk about source, we're talking about this command right here. Help and source. Okay? Or just :SL. Okay? This reads the file in. In fact, when you modify your Vimrc, you can call this on your Vimrc, and it will reload it for you. It helps if you it helps if you've written your Vimrc so that it can be reloaded nicely. Okay, but that's something that we can cover later. Let's toss this. Let's take a look at mine. This is my Vimrc. It is 458 lines long. You can see even I comment for myself A very good thing to do. I see a lot of people, they don't comment. It's not the end of the world if you don't comment. It just means that it's more difficult to share with people. And let's face it, they're nice to share, you know. It also is more difficult for yourself just to even remember sometimes. And I mean, I've carried this thing with me for more than 10 years now. And it's nice to not have to, well, okay, I understand them all now, but in the past, I didn't have to go to the help every time I saw one. It's like, what did I set that for, right? I just have to, I can just read the comment and I'm good to go, all right? And you can see, I mean, I like to, it's my file. I can type whatever I want. So if I want to say backlashes suck, hey, you know what? Backlashes, they suck. So I use shell slash. The point is that everything that you can type on the command line here, say set show command, you can type on, you can put in your file. Okay, everything you can do on the command line, you can do here. And there's even some stuff that's more difficult to do on the command line that's easier to do in here. But I do all of my settings here. All of my settings go in here. Any ways of I can manipulate the Java syntax highlighting by just setting this global value. I do my mappings in here. All of my keyboard mappings get set up in here. There's a special mapping that I was talking about. These two mappings, when I wanted to bring this file in, I just hit "EV". When I change it, I want to type "SV", which will source it back in and bring in my changes. There's the fact that you can see I actually do use comma like everywhere. Okay, and before anyone who actually, you know, is better than me at this pipes up and says, well, why don't you just use leader? You know, leader takes a long time to write, and I don't really care. So what I'm talking about here is the map leader. Whenever you have there's a sort of a default keyboard mapping that you can use with Vim that says if you do a help on map leader, this is the thing, and it looks like this every time, right? That's one of the reasons I don't like typing it, is that you would say map leader A, right? I don't care. That turns into this because the leader by default is the backslash, and I set it to the comma. But I still just type it in literally all the time because I can't be bothered, okay? But the problem with using the comma is that the comma operator now no longer works, right? So I need to remap this. So Control E for me is now what comma used to do in normal mode. That's what this N is, okay? And then it's a no remap, which basically says use the raw stuff. Don't use comma for anything else. I mean, use the comma for what it was originally intended to do. So I do that in normal mode and visual mode, and it works great, okay? So we've learned a couple of mappings at this point. I'm not going to go through all my mappings. I'm just trying to show you what this is. So I've got mappings in here. I have this here, which is kind of odd. That should be up in my settings area. I kind of like to keep these things a little bit organized, but that's where it is. I have some stuff for some plugins here. I don't actually like the Mini Buff Explorer. Tried it for a while, don't like it, so I just kind of disabled it this way. Rather than delete it right now, because I wasn't exactly committed to saying it's terrible and I want to get rid of it, I was kind of on the fence, so I just sort of disable it like this. The Show Marks plugin was the same thing, so I disable it like that. Source Explorer plugin settings, I want to have it behave certain ways, and so that's how I do it. Nerd Tree is, I'm configuring it this way. My F-switch plugin script, I have my mapping set up. Snipmate, I've gotten some functions in there for helping me reload things. For Fuzzy Finder, which is like an amazing plugin that we should hopefully be covering very soon, I have some keyboard mappings there that actually they're pretty boring. I've actually got much more complicated ones at the office, and they work great. Alti-snips, I don't use that anymore, but these are more plug-in setting things. My auto commands are set up. Don't read these. These actually are pretty bad. I should be using file types for these, because these are using file extensions are dumb, so I shouldn't be doing that. Abbreviations, I don't type some things all that well sometimes, and so I just have it fix them for me. And what to do when we're in GUI mode. Okay? So, that is my Vimrc. You know where you can, or where yours is. You know what you can stick in it. Essentially everything. When I was younger, I think 2 years ago, I've aged a lot in 2 years. My daughter is a little over 2. So she's over 2, which means I aged 23 years in the last 2 years. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. But a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to organize my Vimrc better. Rather than just put everything in one file, I'm going to put the settings over in this settings file and my mappings in the mappings file, and I'll source the 2 files from inside Vim. It was stupid. Oh man, I must have been on like some organizational high or something like this. And it didn't make any sense. I recommend just keep them all in the same damn file. That's what it's for. Okay? Vimrc. Let's call that one done for the moment. The next thing we need to take a look at is something incredibly important to understand when we're talking about customizing Vim. We're talking about understanding Vim. We're talking about breaking out of just the Vimrc. I customize Vim using other mechanisms outside of the Vimrc file, and it helps me also to interact with plugins a bit better, to write my own plugins, etc. Okay, so let's take a look at the runtime path. Important thing here is to look at the help on runtime paths. So let's have a help runtime path. Okay, once again, I was very anal and typed all that in. I could have typed RTP and that would have done it. And without the quotes, would have done it too as well. So runtime path, very, very important. You can see for different operating systems, of course, there are all these differences. This is what a Unix type system looks like. This is what a Windows type system looks like. Okay. The structure of the runtime file system is like this. This is where we're describing what the runtime file system looks like. Now, when we talk about it, it's important to first of all understand that it does contain all of these different directories. We're only going to be covering colors, doc, and plugin today, because I find these are 3 rather important ones. But the important thing to understand is that this is reflected in the runtime path. And what am I doing? I'm not doing help on it. See, this is why I shouldn't actually break out of what I normally do, because I'm just dumb. Set runtime path, and there we go. That's what my runtime path looks like. Now, most of this is standard Vim install stuff. It's only the last 3 there. The Vim Ultisnips, the Vimaclim, and Vimaclim After, that they were tossed in by, well, a bit by myself and a bit by some plugins. So those 3 things probably wouldn't show up for you, but some variant of this would show up for you, and it would change depending on which Vim you were using on which operating system. Okay, but essentially that's it. You can see that my that .vim home directory twiddle/.vim or tilde/.vim. Tilde for you Windows guys means home directory. So tilde/.vim is my home directory, the .vim directory, that's my home runtime directory, my home Vim runtime directory. And then I've got the Vim files under the installed Mac Vim. I've got the runtime, the Vim runtime of the installed Mac Vim. I have the after directory of the installed Mac Vim. And then I have an after directory in my home runtime area, and then the 3 other ones that I'm not going to talk about. That structure should be about the same for everybody, and it's important to understand why that is the way it is. In a system that you want to be extensible and customizable, you of course need to ship system defaults, right? No surprise. You need to be able to override those defaults. The last thing we want to do to override what the system is currently doing is walk into the system and edit the files. Never, ever do that. Don't. I can't stress that enough. Vim is designed so that you don't have to do that, and it's terrible to do that. Think about going through, editing this file, that file, changing all kinds of stuff, and then upgrading Vim. All your stuff gets blown away. Terrible, terrible idea. Not to mention the fact that, God forbid, you use Vim on one computer and then another computer, and you have to copy over all. I mean, just don't even think about it. All right, it's just crazy. You do everything in your home directory. The replicated runtime directory structure in your home directory. And when I say replicated, I mean the structure. You can have a completely replicated structure in your home directory. You don't have to have anything at all. The production runtime area, I'm going to call it production, this is what is installed with Vim, contains all the defaults. If you want to, say, take a plugin, copy it out of there, drop it in your home directory and hack it up, then that's what you do. That's how you do it. You take the copy and you modify it, and what happens is, I think every plugin that has ever been written says, if I've already been loaded by setting some sort of global variable, don't load me. Which means, because of the way that runtime path was set up, which was look in my home directory first, it will load up my version of the plugin. The plugin will say, don't load me again. And then after that, it's going to go and keep going through the runtime path to find more plugins. It's going to go into the production area. It's going to find the same thing. It's going to load it. It's not going to overwrite what you have, because that plugin is going to say, don't load me. I've already been loaded. So you have the ability now to override, or to preempt, in this case, what's there. If you have a file that isn't anywhere else, then by default it's going to show up in the Vim runtime configuration, because no one could have replaced it or overridden it or done anything, because it's just the way it is. Okay? After it's sourced in everything from your home directory, it will then start pulling in stuff from the production system. Stuff that is sensitive to not being loaded twice won't be. Stuff that hasn't been loaded yet will be. Okay? And then what's going to happen is it's going to go into the production directories after directory. And it's going to load up what essentially are overrides. These are very, very rarely used. The after directories, just do a help in Vim, look for the after stuff. These are the runtime directory / after that we saw on the runtime path. And let's take another look at that. This is now, we've essentially gone through the first one here, which is the .vim directory, my home.vim, and then after the comma we have the production Vim files directory. Then after that comma we have the production runtime directory. We've now covered those. You can see the next one is the production Vim files after directory. This is the one we're talking about now. It's very rarely used. It allows for more overrides. It says, okay, the production system can now override some of the stuff that it may have found earlier. Like, let's say you made a change in your home directory that is terrible. It's catastrophic. It would cause World War III. Vim has a chance to fix that here, if they can. Or to react to something that you've done, perhaps, based on loaded plugins that you've done, loaded plugins that it's done. It can now compare everything and maybe react to that. You then get last word. Your home directory has an after directory as well. And you can now get last word. You can even say in here, no, damn it, I want World War III. You stopped my World War III. You thwarted my plan. And I shall invoke my plan and blow up Argentina. I don't know if that would cause World War III. Don't try. Don't try. Please. And sure as hell, don't blame me if you do. Okay? Thanks. So that's how it works. All these sort of series of loading this, loading that, loading that, loading that, gives the ability to have system defaults, personal overrides again. It allows you all the flexibility you need. Okay? And that's the runtime directory's loading order. Now let's pop back in and we'll take a look at what actually is in the runtime directory. You can have this sort of tree of files, or this list of directories and files in any of the runtime directories, any of them. Okay? And we're going to cover the doc one now. The doc directory, and like I'm saying, is you modify your home directory version of this. Your doc directory, as you install plugins, as you want to write your own documentation, I actually do that, by the way. You can write your own Vim doc files for your own personal use, drop them in here. But in order to integrate them with the help system, you have to tell Vim about them in terms of the index. The index is done via a command called help tags. Help tags is something that you run when you add a doc file or you take one away. Because what it's going to do, and let's just do this just for now, right? I will do it on my doc directory. Okay? it now parses all of the files in that directory, pulls out the help tags, and creates the tags file. And this is the file it just generated. Okay, you can see there's all kinds of stuff in here. Okay, I have my own documentation. There's plugin documentation. There's standard stuff, whatever. There's all kinds of things in here. But these are the hyperlink tags that we use when we navigate through help. Okay, and once again, as Vim runs around the runtime path and all those different things, loading stuff up, it's going to load up the tags from yours. It's going to load up the tags from the production area. It's going to load them up from the after areas, and so on and so forth, and eventually just build this nice big linked list of things. Okay? Well, not linked list, but you get the idea. List of links. List of links is what I was going for, not linked list. List of links. Yeah, there we go. It's a grammar thing. Okay? So that's how you do it. And so you just kind of drop files in there, you run help tags, and you're good to go. Now let's take a look at the next possibly important one. Is called help on runtime path, or RTP actually would be easier. And we are now into the colors directory. Anytime you want to set a color scheme, anytime you download a color scheme from vim.org, you drop it in your local color scheme directory. If I do an edit on .vim colors, then these are the list of files I personally have in there. Okay? And when I do a color scheme, I can do a color scheme on Python, right? And that's what it is. So important to note, I mean, what some might be asking is, after I've downloaded a color scheme and I've put it in that directory, do I need to restart? No. No, you don't. The color scheme command doesn't sort of have a memory of what was there. So every time you use it, it just looks for what's there. Okay? And it, of course, looks in the production area, and it looks in your area, it looks at all these different areas, all these different areas are seen, right? It doesn't do it on its own, it asks Vim to do it. But the point is that it's going to see all this different stuff, and it's going to see it every time. So you don't need to worry about restarting Vim. Okay? Let's do the last thing, because we're really taking a long time here. I'm going to flip back, and we're going to look at, well, first I'm going to change this, and we're going to take a look at the plugin directory. The plugin directory is where you're going to be installing a lot of plugins. You can see I have a fair number here. But I'm not going to be talking about anyone's plugins in particular today. We're prepping for that, as you might have guessed. This is a plugin I wrote for my own personal use. I haven't given it away because it's a piece of garbage. It works for me, but generally it's a piece of absolute crap. It probably wouldn't work for anybody else. There's a website called dict.org that is basically a free dictionary, and I use it to, I can hit a key on a word and it will go download the definition for that and display it for me inside of Vim. How do I actually load that in Vim and take care of all of this stuff? I drop it in the plugin directory. That's it. That's all you have to do. Vim will eventually, it will see your plugin directory, it will see this plugin, it will load it up, and that's it. You can see at the bottom of that I have made a mapping, I've made a new command, so I've registered these things, these two last lines here, okay? I've now made these part of Vim, so I now have a new command called dict lookup, and I have a mapping that I've mapped to Control K in normal mode, okay? So when it loads that file, it'll see it in the plugin directory, automatically load it at startup, and I'm good to go. I've got all the commands I need, and I can now go nuts with my plugin. Okay? That's it for today. That's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff. So let's just stop, shall we? That's the Vimrc. That's the Vim runtime area. We're now starting to get into how you can really start customizing this system. Head to www.vim.org and look at some of the plugins, look at some of the color schemes. You now know where to put them. Okay? Have a look on my website, DerekWYATT.org, under the Vimrc section. I'm going to finally post mine. I think I've cleaned it up enough that I can post mine directly. so you can have a look at that. Plus, go through some of the explanations of why I've got some stuff there, and maybe it might help you out. Also, I need to say thank you to Blinks TV for this little app here that I'm using to make this, because, well, I promised I would, and it's a good app. It deserves some kudos. So, have a good one, folks. Enjoy. Get customizing. Start tweaking some of the power out of this stuff. Start playing with it, and start saving some of those settings that you like. Start making some mappings if you want to. If you got that down, you want to start playing. Have some fun. All right. Enjoy. Take it easy.